This ain't the little itty-bitty tiny bowl. This is the Super Bowl 59. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 59. Scoring touchdowns is key to hosting the Vince Lombardi Trophy, and you have a shot to score big by betting on them at DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a TD. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. The crown is yours. What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Weird Sunday, gonna be honest. The first Sunday that does not have football since all the way back in August. I'm not counting whatever that was in Orlando, I think. I didn't really watch any of the Pro Bowl festivities. Definitely not a game. Saw my guy Kyle Juszczyk had a touchdown on the first drive of the game, little flag football, but no real football, and we only got one game left. Obviously, it's Super Bowl week, so that's exciting. We got to enjoy it. It's a lot going on. Be a lot of takes flying from former players and articles and all sorts of stuff. So I do want to open today with some football thoughts and how it relates to the big trade that we just saw in the NBA. Luka Doncic, one of the, truly great first, 6-7 years of an NBA career, 5 straight years all NBA, traded Saturday night. And I want to relate that to football and how it relates specifically to these couple teams and just how they go about their business. We had a hiring today. I don't get that into a lot of position coaches hiring, even some of these coordinators that get hired to teams, especially when the head coach, Ben Johnson is going to be the play caller. So whoever he hires as offensive coordinator, whatever. Johnny Morton, I don't really have many thoughts on that when Dan Campbell hires him. I was like, yeah, probably be fine. But today, Chip Kelly was hired by the Raiders and Pete Carroll. So we will dive into that. And something I haven't touched on yet, but Cam Newton had some comments last week about why he'd choose an MVP over a Super Bowl. And I just wanted to dive into that really quick. So the game plan will be more than likely podcast every day, maybe skip a day. I'm traveling this week to New Orleans. We got a busy week. It's New Orleans, going to Waste Management on Friday. So I don't even know if I still got this energy in me. It's a lot of coffee, a lot of water, and just got to keep plowing. But before we dive into some football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners in the official ticketing app of this podcast. Listen, you want to go to the big game? You want to go to any game? Are you a Laker fan? If you are, you should be very, very excited. If you want to go to a Laker game, spring training's right around the corner. Concerts, it's about a month away from concert season really kicking off and rocking and rolling. So comedy shows, you name it, I got you covered. Because Gametime, they're the best in the business. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Okay, let's dive into some football. And obviously, if you were awake on Saturday night, as I was actually in bed when my phone blew up, and I grabbed the iPad that was probably 10 feet away from me, and I just started scrolling. I was like, this is insane. And the NBA trade that still, as I'm recording this, a little under 24 hours later, is just something, if you like sports, and I don't follow the NBA nearly as closely as I once did. Same thing for baseball. I used to watch the Giants play every single night. I watched probably 5 or 6 straight years, every game the Warriors played. And for most of my life, I watched NBA games Tuesdays, Thursdays on the weekend. I just don't consume the product the same. Now, I still follow the stories, and I'm a sucker for transactions. And I think the best part about like the one thing, the experience I had working in football and now doing this is I know like the conversations are the same. When you work in a building for a team, you're BSing about potential trades and potential moves and potential guys on your team. Is this guy the right fit? Is this guy a good guy? Is this someone to build around? Like the business of pro sports is, do you want to get into business with this guy for $200 million? Do you want to get into business with this guy for $100 million? That's what companies all around America talk about all the time. Do we want to acquire this? Well, what's the cost? And in pro sports, you're just dealing with human beings. And in the NBA, a guy like Luka's $350 million. In the NFL, a guy like Brock Purdy, potentially $200 million. So if you are not having serious, long conversations about everything that goes into this, you're not doing your job. And sometimes as a fan, it's a little more on the surface. And like it was impossible to not have some thoughts and takes when something like that happens. But you're constantly discussing that on the inside. And the difference is if you're a GM or a coach, is like you can talk to other people that have decision-making power and run some things by them. Like, would you be interested in this? It's about to happen at the combine in a month. The amount of conversations that go down at the combine would blow people's socks off of things that never get done. And a lot of players, if they found out, like, damn, you threw my name out there. Yeah, most names are thrown out there. There is probably under 5 to definitely less than 10% of players that never get thrown around. And honestly, the number's probably under 5. Most players at times just get discussed. It could just be over coffee. It could be over a cocktail. It could be over a steak with a fellow GM, with a fellow coach, with a fellow decision maker. And I think, moves in sports really define your career as someone in the front office. And obviously, this move for the Dallas Mavericks and their guy Nico is going to define his career. If Luka, like he thinks, is going to stay fat and injured, he'll look like a genius, right? Especially if he goes on to continue to have success. If Luka keeps maintaining what he's been doing and the Lakers do what the Lakers do, win a lot, which pains me to say it, he's going to look like a moron. And I think when you look at these two NFL teams in the Super Bowl, it's not random they're here. And it's not by accident. And it also wasn't by without taking some massive, massive swings. I think we take for granted these two quarterbacks, especially Patrick, because he's been starting for so long, how we got here. Think about the Cowboys. Not all the stuff going on with Jerry and the coach. I'm just their quarterback, Dak Prescott. It is easy to just sustain with Dak Prescott. You can just do it over and over and over again. And listen, we'll criticize, be like, you probably, it's like more often than not, if you do a decent job building your team, you're going to compete for a playoff spot and make the playoffs a lot. But we know you're not winning anything in the playoffs, right? And the Chiefs, who had a very, very consistent player, who had a very high floor but a pretty low ceiling, were just good every single year. They were rattling off playoff bursts. I think, was it 5 out of 6 or 4 out of 5 of the years with Alex Smith, they made the playoffs. They only won one playoff game. Look at the Cowboys. Only won one playoff game with Dak Prescott over the last however many years. But it's like, hey, we're going to the playoffs every year. And even the year that they traded up for Patrick Mahomes, they had made the playoffs the previous year. That's why they had to trade up so far. It's not like they were some shitty team. That took some balls. I think it's easy to go, of course they did that. What if that didn't work? What if that thing blew up in their face? Because I'll give you an example of one where it did. Trey Lance. The 49ers had something. It was just kind of working with Jimmy Garoppolo. I would say Alex was a better player, but it was like every year you were competitive, you were making the playoffs. Hell, Jimmy took the team to the Super Bowl. And they took a huge swing and it blew up in their face. Somehow the football guys God's handed them Brock Purdy. Look at the Chiefs. They went, Tyreek Hill, who's one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, we're winning with him at a super high clip. He's uncoverable. We're going to punt on this guy. We're just going to punt. People were like, are you sure, Andy? Are you sure? I mean, that took balls. That took freaking stones. So when you look at the Chiefs, you just go, well, Andy's one of the greatest coaches ever. Veach is a really good evaluator. They have made a couple moves along the way. Two specific ones, the transition to Alex, and then obviously punting on Tyreek Hill, that took some big cojones. And I would say the same thing about Howie. And we've touched on this over the last couple of weeks. It's easy to say now, like, Jalen fell right in their lap. Now, he gets credit because he had a high pick, even though his team was good, because of all those trades he had made the previous year. And I think he made one with the Saints. But, like, that was a ballsy pick. Just like it's easy to go after the fact, well, it's like, God, everyone should have known Warren Sapp was going to be an all-time great. It's like, God, Randy Moss, no brainer. A lot of teams had major red flags on those guys. So it's easy to go after the fact and be like, damn, they got this guy with pick 12, with pick 24. It's like, yeah, they got him there for a reason. And Jalen Carter was easily the best player in the draft. Easily. So it's easy to go. And listen, I'm guilty of this too. Like the Falcons, man, they really fucked up. They should have pulled the trigger on him. Well, it's like, I bet they were terrified to draft him. Hell, the Eagles probably were, a little scared. And they took a pretty big flyer on the guy. Now, they felt good about their infrastructure, but like this could have blown up in their face. Instead, they have one of the best defensive players on their roster. And a lot like Patrick Mahomes, I guess it's a little different because Alex was much more consistent, but like they drafted Carson Wentz really, really high. And then they paid him a lot of money. And then it got weird. And they didn't hesitate to punt. But when they punted and they traded him to a first-round pick, which sounds crazy now to the Colts, pretty ballsy going with Jalen. That wasn't just some no-brainer like this thing is going to work out. I was wrong. I thought he was a running back. And listen, we can nitpick him all we want. That wasn't just the right move. They've clearly got one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL and a guy they've proven they can win with. So it's like these two teams are here and everyone goes, well, really good coaching staffs. And obviously Andy's an all-time great. Howie's one of the best general managers. It's just like they got a ton of talent. Like, yeah, how did they do this? Like, how did they get there? Like, listen, you're going to call me a Laker hater. They just benefit. They're the fucking Lakers. And people just want to go there. And for whatever reason, they're like, we'll just take Anthony Davis, who's 31, also gets injured all the time, for your 25-year-old, five-time straight All-NBA first team. Yeah, it's like, what? What? Like, that's the easiest trade you're ever going to make for the Lakers. There has never been a trade for such a great player that has been an easier yes than the one the Lakers said. That is not the case with when they pulled the trigger for Jalen Carter or when they made the trade for Patrick Mahomes. And listen, clearly they nailed that one. And Veach had a lot of conviction, and Andy and those guys liked him a lot. There's no guarantee. You're trading all the way up here. You're going to have Alex Smith, and then you're going to punt on him after that year. And even the year they punted on him, like he just had the best year of his career based on one game in practice. Like, I think it's always easy, and people do this a lot in business. Like, well, if I would have known, after the 2008 crash that homes were going to go up as much as they did, I wish I would have bought like 3 pieces of property. Yeah, some people just did it. It's like, God, if I would have known NVIDIA would have gone up by 100x, I wish I would. Well, some people did. And some people actually put their capital, and some people did put their risk on the table. And it's like, that's what these guys do. And Andy has a long history of this. Howie, these guys love risk, and they take big swings, and they've hit on them. Nico Harrison can pray to God that he hits on like this half as well as they did on theirs. And the other thing is, to the Luka trade, is there's a lot of stuff coming out about Luka being fat, that this year he played at 270 pounds. I actually watched more basketball on Friday and Saturday night than I probably have beside Clay's return to the Warriors most of the year. I watched the fourth quarter of the Denver Sixers game on Friday night, and then I watched the second half of the Laker-Knicks game. And you look at Jokic, who's easily, I think there's a wide gap, the best player in the NBA. He's kind of fat. But you know what? It doesn't matter. He dominates. Kind of fat might be strong. He's just not shredded. He doesn't look like your typical great NBA player, right? He doesn't have muscle definition. But I watch him do whatever he wants on anyone. Now, the thing with Luka is like, clearly they have concerns about his durability because of his weight. And this is what we talked about. When you invest hundreds of millions of dollars into someone, and in the NFL, it's quarterbacks, The last thing I ever want to worry about is anything with you off the field. So when it comes to character, how you live your life, how you treat people, who you're married to, who you're dating, how you just operate outside the facility matters to me. I better have 100% never worry about you vibes. And then all the intangible stuff when it comes to football, you better check every fucking box. Work ethic, study habits, drive, whatever it takes. I'll never forget when I saw Mahomes, or excuse me, Veach. I went to many of you probably weren't listening, but I went to the 2020 Super Bowl week in Miami. It was Chiefs Niners. And I had Veach on the show. I went to where they were staying. And me and Veach were BSing a little bit. And it was right, that was the offseason where they were going to pay Patrick. And he was telling me, like, after they had won the AFC Championship game, which was his first win, he's like, I get in the office the next day. Obviously, it's their first Super Bowl appearance, him and Andy together. And I got there like 6:15, and Mahomes was already there watching the tape on his iPad in the training room. Like, I don't think he gets enough credit for, like, the work ethic, football drive, study habits. Like, it's elite. He's not doing this by accident. Like, think Manning, think Brady, think Breeze. That's him. And I think when you look at the other couple top guys, Allen and Lamar, there aren't any question marks with those guys. No one goes, I wonder how seriously this guy takes football. If you watch the Hard Knocks with Baltimore, John Harbaugh, I think was it the Steeler game or it might have been the second week for the Bills game. One of their first 2 weeks, they were going to practice inside. And sometimes cold weather teams, they're used to the cold, so they're not worried about playing outside. They want to practice inside to get stuff done. You're just able to be so much more efficient inside. Your guys can play in outdoors. And Lamar like raises his hand or looks at John like, no, I want to, let's practice outside. I want to feel it. I want everyone to feel it. Like their football character is elite. And I think, you look at Zion, he's fat and lazy, doesn't even like basketball, which to me, the NBA has this broken business model because you get paid no matter what when you're a high pick guy and you show any signs of life, no matter what happens. In the NFL, that's not what happens. That is not what happens at all. I've seen a lot of people go on rants. I saw Colin had one about Bronny, but just how the NBA can be unserious sometimes, right? Like Luka deserves huge contracts. Jokic, Giannis, LeBron, Steph. And then there are guys like Zion. He got what? He's getting, how much is he getting paid? Like, what are we doing? And I think in the NFL, for you to get paid, you got to produce. And you also got to be a good guy. And you also got to be a football junkie. It's pretty rare that, and listen, I know more guys on good teams than I do bad teams, but I would say a pretty consistent theme of all the successful squads, they pay guys who are football addicts. And I think we're pretty lucky, and I've said this for a long time. I can't even imagine being 25, 26, and someone giving you hundreds of millions of dollars. The maturity that all these guys shows. Think how good you feel if you're a Bengal fan. How much he gives a fuck. He will. Like, the season was going. It couldn't have been going any worse early on. Like, this guy's laying on the line for me, and he's not just doing it like randomly. He's approaching it like every game's the Super Bowl. And like, listen, I don't think they're right on trading this guy because they have concerns about he's fat. He's 25 years old. But like, there are none of the concerns. If he's a top 2 or 3 player in the NBA, that's essentially Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Joe Burrow. There aren't concerns with any of those guys in terms of their conditioning, how much they like it, how hard they play. The other knock, he plays no defense. It's a fact. Doesn't play any defense. Right now, in football, when you play quarterback or you play linebacker, you don't play offense or you don't play defense. But still, like, you either give it all or you don't. And I think the NFL is very, very lucky that the cream of their crop at quarterback, and honestly, even the second and third tier guys, pretty high level guys. When you look at the Jared Goffs, look at Jalen Hurts. We can nitpick him sometimes, like, not great from within the pocket. And that's a fair criticism. No one has ever said, you know what, Jalen? I don't know if he's into football. I don't know if he's working out hard enough. I don't know if he's preparing well enough. The only criticism I've ever heard is like, we'd like him to be a little more vocal, right? Yell at guys. But it wasn't because, he doesn't know what's going on. The Jared Goffs, the Dax, even the Tuas, Purdy's about to get paid. Trevor Lawrence, like, Listen, some guys might be better than others, but no one, that's the thing with Trevor Lawrence. Like, how much does he like it? And I think it's kind of fair because you watch him, I watch the NFL and you go, this guy giving me everything he has. And then you watch him, you're like, I don't know. Does he love it? I think it's a fair criticism. So man, the other great part about the NFL is when you like the Bills, even if you never win a Super Bowl with Josh Allen, you know that Josh Allen's going to be your quarterback no matter what. Even if you never win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson, you know what? You know Lamar Jackson is going to be on the team for as long as essentially you want him on the team, especially in the prime of his career. When you think about how often elite quarterbacks get traded in their prime, never happens. Think about Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest players of all time, got traded like 38, 39 years old. We thought the Russell Wilson trade was crazy, and it turns out like his prime was over. It was done. Deshaun Watson, traded for a reason. Didn't want him. Adios. See ya. Godspeed. So, man, it's just, it's crazy how high level most of these good quarterbacks in the NFL are. This podcast is brought to you by Travis Matthew, apparel designed for confidence and comfort, no matter where the day takes you. You know where the day just took me? On a walk. It's like 48 degrees outside. I had my Travis Matthew sweatshirt on, had the hat on to keep my bald head warm, had to throw on the Travis Matthew vest. None of these products were even given to me. They were purchased a long time ago because I've been wearing this stuff forever. I swear by these products. I did not know, though, that they had this new age shoe. You can rock it, work out. You can wear it on a walk. You could wear it to a business meeting. It was originally crafted for elite runners, and the new age was adapted to more of a versatile wear. I plan on rocking this thing in New Orleans. I mean, look how good this thing looks. It's comfortable, looks good, sharp. I highly recommend it. So visit Travis Matthew for 20% on your first order. Look good, feel good, play good, and be comfortable. The other story today that I saw when I was shopping for wedding rings, it's like, well, I got her a wedding ring, and then she also needs a wedding band, and I need a wedding band. It's like, does this ever end? So I guess I got to start wearing a ring around here in a month. But someone texted me while I was shopping for the old ring. Hey, Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly what? Chip Kelly is the new offensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, he also interviewed with the Raiders in 2024 for Antonio Pierce. And that was at the time when he was interviewing everywhere, trying to jump ship and get away from UCLA. I have two reactions on this. One, isn't it kind of sad what has happened to one of the most famous coaches of the last 25 years? When you look at other guys who have been discussed like him, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin, Lincoln Riley even, but even NFL coaches, right? They don't just become coordinators and then just start bouncing around. It's a little bizarre. And at one point in time, and I worked for the Eagles, there was not a bigger star in the coaching world. There really was not. And for what's happened to his career, then he goes to UCLA and he just hates it. And listen, he's got a lot of friends in the media and they're all like, it's a shitty job. It's tough to deal with. Yeah, it's not perfect. It ain't Ohio State. But then he leaves to go to Ohio State and you're like, oh, that's his guy. And then he just leaves again to go to the Raiders. At least when you went to Ohio State, you go, well, he's getting $2.5 million. They recruit by far the best players in the country. And they basically said, Chip, you don't need to recruit. It's like, pretty good gig. You go to the Raiders, it's like, well, they got no quarterback. Their offensive line sucks. They have no wide receivers. And they got one good tight end. It's like, this is what you're going to do? Like, you really just hate recruiting that much? Because this does not seem like a good situation for you. I also think this is a little weird. Right? It's one thing when you take a step down like he did from UCLA to go to Ryan Day. That was a guy that he coached when he was at New Hampshire. That was a guy who worked for him in Philly and in San Francisco. Like, they have like a father-son bond. So it was going to work. I don't mean on the field. I just mean personalities. Now he's going to go to Pete Carroll, who, listen, isn't like Mike Vrabel, Belichick yelling at you. Much more of an upbeat guy, but still like big ego. Well, Chip's got a massive ego too. Feels like a little bit of a weird fit. And in theory, like, what does Pete Carroll want to do? Run the ball. That's what he wants to do. Run the ball. And that's what, in theory, Chip likes to do too, but you're not going to run the ball with this operation. I'm pretty sure the Raiders last year were one of the worst running teams like the history of the NFL. I just think it's a weird fit. And I think it's just kind of sad what, the way his career has gone relative to the rest of his peers. He's kind of turned into like an NBA player, just bouncing around. It's like, what are we doing here? So I think the hire is just weird. I really do. And I'm pro Pete Carroll and I'm pro John Spytek. I think it was smart to bring back Patrick Graham, who's a good defensive coordinator. This one, I'm sorry. I just think, and it's not like Middlekauff, you just hate the guy. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I'm just saying, like, he would not have been my hire. Like, his shit ain't working in the NFL. It didn't work in the NFL his last couple of years. And you're going to play Spagnola. You're going to play Jim Harbaugh's defense. And you're going to play that Denver defense. And I get it. You're like, we want to modernize our offense. And what? Get throttled? So I give the Raiders a lot of credit for their two main hires. This one, little off the beaten path. Don't think it makes much sense. Cam Newton. Cam Newton said some comments, if you missed them, that he wouldn't trade his MVP for a Super Bowl title. And let me just say this before I get into my opinion on his comment. I do believe if you ask Cam Newton, and I attended his Super Bowl when it was at Levi Stadium in the Bay Area. I went. I had a lot of money on the Broncos that game. It's one of the biggest bets I'd ever made. Still to this day, it was large. And part of it wasn't Cam Newton. It was I had been doing Raider games. I had seen that Denver team for like 3 straight years. Their defense was so fucking good. I understood Peyton Manning couldn't throw, but it was like, and listen, it wasn't a bet against Cam. It was more just like, I don't think they should be an underdog. And obviously their defense won the game. But I do believe if you would ask Cam Newton the week of the Super Bowl or the night before the Super Bowl, especially, I think you win the MVP the night before the Super Bowl, would you trade the MVP for a win tomorrow? I think he would have said yes. I could be wrong, but I believe that any player, if you said that to him the night before the Super Bowl, they had just won the MVP, Matt Ryan, you go back to all the guys that have won MVPs and then not won the Super Bowl, they would trade it. I think Aaron Rodgers would trade his MVPs for Super Bowl. I think anyone at the time. Now, I think after the fact, I don't think this is that complicated. If you think about the Super Bowl for Cam Newton, it has a negative connotation. He didn't just get viewed as like having a bad game, but when people bring up that moment, it's the lowest moment of his career. He's literally made fun of because of it. He wouldn't jump on the ball. And former players bring that up to him. Yet everywhere he goes and everywhere he has gone over the course of his life since 2017, he has introduced former NFL MVP, former Heisman Trophy winner and national champion, Cam Newton. Yet if I bring out Joe Montana or Troy Aikman or Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers, I would go, this is Aaron Rodgers, Super Bowl champion and 4-time MVP. This is Peyton Manning, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time MVP, or however many he won. That's how you're introduced as a player. When you go to events, when you go to speaking events, when he goes to Auburn to events, to fundraise, whatever. When he's doing Radio Row for during media week or during Super Bowl week for the media. So the MVP to him has a positive connotation. It's a positive thing. The Super Bowl is a negative thing. Like, I think it's kind of a unique circumstance because I saw everyone, and rightfully so, like, no shit, Cam Newton said that. 100% Cam Newton said that. Like, my take was, like, I was there. It was pretty bad. That game is, in a weird way, because it's so hard just to get there, like the lowest moment of his career. Like, he lost random games throughout his career that no one ever talks about, thinks about, or even watched. They don't matter. But when you bring up Cam Newton, I would say most people think about not jumping on the fumble in the Super Bowl. Now, I'd have to go back and look at what the score was at the time. I haven't been there. No, I had a few cocktails. Never thought they were going to win. As the game was going, they were just kind of overwhelmed, even as Peyton, after the first couple drives, could not throw. But, like, if you were Cam, the MVP isn't just your most prized possession. It's literally your defining moment as a professional football player. Making the Super Bowl just was not. And it definitely isn't discussed like that. For a long time, I was insecure about when I introduce and listen, I play golf. It's where I meet the most random, people. Like when I do this for a living and I'm talking to other people inside this business, they all know what you do. But when I'm on a golf course, I meet someone for the first time. Eventually, what comes up? What do you do? And you're playing golf with somebody. It's like, yeah, I work at Wells Fargo, or yeah, I work for this insurance company. Yeah, I own, a string of restaurants. What do you do? I used to always be, it was weird. I would be like, I used to work in radio, and I used to always kind of start it off that way because I was insecure about saying I was a podcaster. And I remember one night Maria's like, why are you so weird about this? Just say what you do. What you do you're a podcaster, right? It's going pretty well. And so for the last probably year, I am a podcaster. And it just starts actually a pretty interesting conversation sometimes. But like when you are introduced or when that's your defining moment, like he is defined internally, like that's a good thing. Cam Newton, MVP. That's a positive thing. Like, so it's easy for all these other guys to say, like even Charles Barkley, and I hear him come up a lot. Like he would have given anything for the 93 MVP to win that finals against Michael Jordan. That finals against Michael Jordan is a positive thing for Charles. He was fucking unreal. He was known also in the Dream Team, second best player in the Dream Team. So like everything surrounding his MVP is like, yeah, I was at the highest level and I went toe to toe. Cam got to the highest level in the pros and it was like not the same. He had a bad night, wasn't very good, and then like didn't jump on the fumble. So listen, everyone's shitting on him for it. I understand. Like when you're insecure about something, you kind of want to avoid it. And like I just think people think he's selfish because of this. I think we're all kind of selfish. We really are. And I think it's easy for a lot of guys to say. And now where I disagree with him, and he's trying to justify it when he goes, well, Trent Dilfer and Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Well, yeah, Cam, if you would have won that Super Bowl, you would have been like, I don't know how many guys have won the MVP in a Super Bowl in the same year. Probably a pretty special category. Guys like Montana, Manning, but Brady, Favre, like it's a short list of pretty sweet dudes. So it would have been a big deal. He tries to justify it because he's not dumb. He knows it's going to sound stupid, but I do get where he's coming from. I really do.